Nick, I'm excited for this next guest. Doesn't need an introduction with all the social media pages he's in and consistent posting and just his entire life on a daily basis. It seems like there isn't many that don't know his name. I would say that not everyone's met you face to face, so this is a great opportunity to introduce you to those watching. So, Nick, how is it that you know Jeff?
Yeah, I met Jeff in the spring of 2021. I think Jeff was just getting a CNC, and we got connected from Denny Johns, who's local to me here in Minnesota. And I think I talked to Jeff for the first time as he was pulling out flooring at a lake home or something. And that's been a common theme, always on the go.
Always on the go.
Yeah, and then just grew that relationship, helping him grow Mosaic with Jeff, and now consider him a very good friend. So glad to have you, Jeff. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm happy
Thanks
to be on.
for coming.
Jeff,
You should give us a quick background, Jeff, kind of on your journey, how you got into carpentry in general, cabinetry, and kind of where you're at in your business growth there.
Yeah, so I grew up in a subdivision, and next door neighbor built all the houses. It was his subdivision, and he built all the houses. And so in 1992, I was probably 14 or 15. I went and started working for him during the summers, and then after college, I went back to work for him and worked for him till I was probably in 2004. And we built houses from the ground up and kind of did everything. Trim carpentry, built cabinets on site. And then in 2004, I went off on my own. And then I think I got married and got my first shop in 2008 and moved to the shop I'm in 2015. So
were cabinets part of it from the start when you went off on your own in 2004?
now when I went off on my own, it was a lot of framing and building decks and trimming. I didn't have a shop. I would set up in a house that I was trimming out and build like a vanity for somebody, but it wasn't. I did a lot of built-ins and stuff like that, but it was all mobile because I didn't have a shop. And so cabinets was just something I wanted to get into. Once I got, I said I got married and I got a shop. It was a 1,500 square foot shop, and I thought it was huge. And I didn't want to frame anymore in the winter, is the long and short. And I decided that cabinets were intriguing, and then it was the whole process of buying tools and everything else, which I still like.
well, and Jeff, I just add, back in that 2008 time frame, there's a lot of users that have got a similar story, right? They'd work for somebody and then they make that decision to go out on their own. What was the some of the core reasons why you decided to move from that company and become your own business at that time?
I think I just kind of reached a level where I thought I knew more than the guy I was working for. And as I went out on my own, I turned out that I didn't. But I had I had a different process. I mean, it was time for me to move on. It's the same thing that I've seen is employees have come and work for me at some point in time. An employee is going to move on. And that's just kind of where it was at. So from there, I went out on my own. And then when the recession hit in 08 and 09, I went and worked commercial for a commercial carpentry company for a couple years. And that really opened my eyes to the whole commercial world of cabinets and the commercial millwork and how everything goes together that way, which I still use to this day, and I have a lot of good contacts from that. But when the economy came back, I jumped back in my van and was back on my I never closed down Jeff Bellows Construction and just sat idle for a bit.
That's awesome.
What year, Jeff, would you say your main focus was cabinets and trim shortly after that? Like 13, 14?
2015 is when I moved to this shop. I'd had a 1,500 square foot shop at my house, and then I was renting an 800 square foot bay that I was moving everything down and spraying in and running out of. And then I found the property I'm at now in 2015, and then I moved down here. And by that time, I had a vertical panel saw, and I had a line bore, and I had it started to see a little bit of the how to actually, instead of just producing a cabinet, how to be manufacturer as close as I could.
And how long after you bought the shop you're in now did you tell your wife?
It kind of went like this. It went, hey, I bought a property in Glenwood today. I need you to help me buy it, and we won't ever have to live there. And then later on, we found out that we had to live here. So
Goodness me.
that and the first house I bought when we got married that I built my first shop at, she never got to pick either. So
2 houses in a row, huh?
Jeff, let's jump into some of your social media proclivities, I guess. I mean, I just wonder how far back does this go? How far back does your involvement in social media, the groups, posting, tools and stories and just kind of daily life of being a cabinet shop and carpenter, when did that really kick in for you?
I was trying to think about that, and I was thinking back. I remember years ago, my wife was like, "Hey, you're not on Facebook that much. You should join some of these groups that are specific to your interests." Which I hold that over her head now because she told me to. But not 18, 19, or 20, somewhere in there, there was a couple cabinet groups that were the Wild West, and I got to be a mod in one because I was sharing stuff. And then that one, everybody kind of fled from that one, and Rich Susi and I got the group going now. We call it the Big Cabinet Group, which is cabinetry, millwork, and installers. I guess I don't even know the official name of it.
Over 50,000 members on there right
Over
now.
50,000. And I remember it started. We just grabbed some people and we just decided that it was going to be a safe place to try to just expand knowledge and share. And so from that, I just started sharing little tidbits of information that was going on. I mean, I remember never forget one time. There was working when I was working commercial. There was this guy, and he wasn't a very good carpenter, and I was just kind of looking at him. But he was doing something on the miter saw, and I kind of looked, and then I figured out what he was doing. And I'd been a carpenter for by this time a long, long time, and what he was doing was hooking on the fence to get a short point measurement off of an angle. And so there's just the little tiny things that when I was coming up before the groups and all this. You couldn't just get information. Nobody, the whole cabinetry and the whole carpentry industry was these tough people that you got to learn by the school of hard knocks, and we're not changing that. And I wanted the groups to not be that way, so we just started to open it up. And Rich, he just decided he didn't want to run the groups anymore. And then from that, Brian Papes helped me admin them. And then I have a really, really strong, we have a strong group of moderators that have been there since the very beginning. And so that's how the groups run. I for sure don't do it by myself, but I do try to post a lot, and I try to keep it always in a way that's positive, and let the new people post. There's no such thing as a dumb question. There's whatever. And one of the greatest things is to see some of the people come in here, and you'll see them ask a few questions, whether it be in Mosaic or whether it be, with CNCs or tools and all this. And pretty soon, if you watch, that person will then be giving information to somebody else later on. And that's what it's really all about. So this group's been going strong probably since 2021. And then from then there's a bunch of spinoffs from that. But yeah, I mean, I guess there's probably 8 or 10, admins and mods, and they've all been in there since the very beginning. So got a lot of help and a lot of people. And I think it took a while. In the beginning, we had to ban a lot of people and boot people, and there was all kinds, but now it's now it runs pretty smooth, and for the most part we have occasional people that come in, but we try to keep it very positive.
That's awesome. I know Nick and I really look to your leadership, honestly, with the Mosaic group, just trying to keep things positive, not letting it be like this cesspool of just people dogging on the topic or dogging on someone's work. I mean, we all know that, I'm trying to think of the one the trim Facebook group.
Yeah,
for the longest
page,
time, that was just a cesspool, right? I mean, just terrible.
It is. I mean, you have to really stop it. You have to stop it because in the groups, unfortunately, one negative comment will bring out all the negative. You know what I mean? And then you'll click on somebody who made a negative comment, and that person has never really contributed to the group whatsoever except for that. And so for the most part, they run pretty good. Sometimes it takes it. Sometimes people, I mean, it's just human nature, need to, have a little bit of interaction. But
yeah. I think you guys in that big group and what Jason and I have taken in the Mosaic group is like, it's still really objective, right? You can kind of voice things that maybe aren't duckies and bunnies all the time, but it's still a constructive conversation, and people can get things out of it. And it's like all the topics that come up in the Mosaic group aren't always, some people have some complaints here and there or something, and I just think it opens up conversation. I think we've come a long ways because of things like that.
Yes.
So Jason and I definitely take that from your leadership in the big group. So
There's definitely ways to interact, approach both sides of an issue, or in a constructive way versus coming at it with everybody riled up and being aggressive.
So I just mentioned the Mosaic group. Obviously, you're a Mosaic software user. Maybe tell us a little bit about how you started with cabinet software, what software you started with, and kind of the journey to where you are now.
Yeah. So in like I said, probably about in 2008 or so, I got a builder or two, and of course they wanted some drawings, and I was like hand drawing. And if anybody ever seen my penmanship's horrible, I'm not drawing's horrible. And I had a guy named Shane Meyer working for me, and we were like, I was drawing stuff out on scrap 1/4 inch down, and everything manually. And so I originally started with a cabinet program called Cabinet Solutions, and it was a basic program. I could get a drawing to the builder, and he could give it to the plumber and electrician, and it worked. And probably when I was coming down here in 2015, I'd have to look back and see when I actually got Mosaic. I can't remember. There was a guy named Chad Hansen out of Walnut, Iowa, and he's always been really good to me. I met him when I was working commercial and installed casework for him, and he's been a great guy. And he's like, Jeff, you need to upgrade your software. And so I had these two programs for the longest time. I had Cabinet Solutions, I had this Mosaic, and I didn't really, he goes, you need to just draw in one and go with it. And so I just jumped in and started drawing in Mosaic. And then I remember, in the very beginning, one of the things was I would, until I met with Nick for the first time, I don't think I ever opened the interior tab. I would just get the face frame to do what it wanted. Yeah, it's a true story. And then I would just go out there, and I didn't have scribes set and all this, and we would look at the panel saw, and we knew this was a minus a half plus or whatever, and you just had to break it all down. And it's so crazy to sit back and think that I didn't know. I didn't know what I was missing out on. Nowadays, if I had, that's not the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. So we can always go back on that, but. I didn't know what I was missing out on. We made all of our door lists manually. We had all this, and that goes to the training is all I really would have had to have done is spend, a few $100s in training, and I could have had all that, but I just didn't know. And I didn't have time to learn it, And so I was my own, what I found out was I was my own problem is, that this works. Why, square peg, round hole, big hammer, keep moving.
Yep.
And
I'll add on top of that too, though, Jeff. Like from 2015 to 21, when I met you, the groups didn't exist either, right? So all of this free flowing info where you see what people are doing. Oh man, that guy's made a custom report for this, or they're doing this. Like, I think that's brought us farther than anything, right? Is getting all of this out into the open.
Absolutely.
Everyone could see what is possible. And I think that's probably the biggest thing the group has done, in my opinion, is just bring all of this stuff into the public view. And I think people are doing more on Mosaic, like in the last 3 years since our group, than the previous 10 in terms of like pushing it to its max.
100%. I would 100% agree. What I've seen is, at first we had all these different groups, and then we had a cabinetry group, and out of that sprung up all these other groups, and they're all interconnected, a lot of the same core people. But yeah, I mean, it is literally, we went from everybody being a competitor to we don't talk to all of a sudden the guy down the road, around here, there's Tyler Graham, Eric Anderson, Jason Sorensen, amongst, then a bunch of other in Omaha that at any given time I can call them or they can call me and be like, hey, have you seen this? Not to mention you can make a question and something like that, but it's went to, somebody, you can partner up. If somebody's machine's down, they can send us something to cut. And that would have never been possible without the groups and then the interaction. And so, as much as some people don't like social media, as far as, my company would not be where it's at 100%, no, without the groups and without, somebody posting something and me looking at that and going back to when I said, I just didn't know. Now I look at something, I'm like, he's doing that. And I'm like, that makes sense. That doesn't mean I'm going to change because I don't like change a whole lot. But I mean, it does make sense.
cycle starts.
Typically somewhere around here, I just have a notepad next to me. Whenever there's an issue, I just write something on there. I just write a little something on there. And once I get a decent sized amount, I book some time and we run through it all and we go back out. But I tell the guys, what do we need? It's a hole to mark the partition top so we don't put partitions in wrong. And it's the little mistakes like that I post good, I post bad. I don't really try to hold it back a lot. But other people have those exact same failures and success stories, and that's what everybody
Absolutely.
likes to see. And so,
and stuff like that's helped more people than I think we even know it has.
Everybody that we've interacted with really in the groups and all this they're all about the same. I mean, everybody's different a little bit, whatever, but it's the same thing. We're trying to feed our families and get through the day and run a business in life and everything else. But it's everybody's so similar no matter what. When I've traveled the country, I've seen that the same thing everywhere. Everybody has a little bit of way to do it. I'm coming from a smaller shop. Some of these shops are huge, but most small shops have a little, like, why do you do it that way? Well, because I don't have room for this, or I don't have, so everybody has their own little workaround. And so within that, you can find a person that, you really, really, mesh with. And those people, there's, thousands and thousands of interactions that go on, not even during the, from Messenger and everything else.
Yep, that's very true.
So, so you said 2021 is when you ultimately really dove further into Mosaic, and mostly because you had a CNC on the way. And so maybe tell us a little about what the last 4 years have been like. What kind of product you were producing back then, what CNC has allowed you to do.
Yeah. So when I look back 5 years ago, everything was very manual. I was very much, we were a face frame with a 1/2-inch overlay community around here in all 5-piece doors. And, don't say 1-piece MDF doors around me. I didn't like it. And everything was like, started with a huge pile of wood that we had to process. I think in 2020, the fall of 2020, I made a post in one of the groups. I'd have to go find it, but it said, I'm contemplating buying a sliding table saw versus a CNC. And Jason Baum said, come see me. And, I drove 2 hours and I saw his setup, and he had a CNC and he had a bander, and he went over all the pros and cons. And I'm like, the whole jump was, I didn't know the software. I didn't have to learn all this, craziness. I didn't know how the CNC ran. I didn't know how the two talked to each other. I didn't know any of that. And I was so busy working that I wasn't really taking the time to research all that, where nowadays it's very available. And, but nope, on the way home, I stopped by my buddies in Walnut, Iowa, and bought a used edge bander, and got back here, brought the edge bander in. I got a CNC showed up in May, I believe, of 2021. And I was driving home from my parents' lake house, contemplating how I was going to run this stupid machine. And Nick called me, our buddy Denny Johns. I talked to Denny and told Denny that I was pretty concerned, and he had sent me a library, and I couldn't get it. I just didn't know. And I remember our first conversation. I said, Nick, I'm not stupid, but I'm not a computer person by any means. And he said, that's fine. And so when he started going through it, it made sense. And then everything started to click there. And I'm like, I'm going to push frameless cabinets, and I'm going to push 1-piece MDF doors. Ironically, I was talking to one of my builders the other day who tried to make me do 1-piece doors 6-8 years ago. And we laughed about it because, that's what we do now. But it's really changed. And so COVID hit, and all the materials were spiking. Everybody was trying to figure out how they're going to keep their price. And I kind of did some math. I talked with Nick about it, and I talked to some other people about it. And I came back and I said, here's the deal. Most of my jobs were bid out 6 months ahead of time. And the builders were like, well, how are we going to do this? I said, I can keep my same price, but we got to switch to 1-piece doors and frameless. And they said, sold. And that's how frameless came to Southwest Iowa.
Isn't that
Way to
something?
do it.
It is beautiful.
A quick pause here. I just want to point out, you going through that story of, you and Nick being contacted. Nick, I'm going to have to find out more about this story with how you and Denny know of each other too. But you're hearing the origin story here. Nick, that's kind of like a piece of your startup, and that's where
Absolutely. I mean, that was
Jeff really started to turn some
Jeff.
heads.
It was the first two people ever were Jeff and Chris Hendrickson in Florida,
Isn't that something?
and still two of
And
my
so I
best friends to the
started, I
day.
started telling everybody how great Nick was. And next thing I know, he's hard to get a hold of. I'm like, dang it, you know.
Fire.
And so he always fit me in. But I mean, it was like the crazy Wild West back then. It was, and all this.
That's how I got Nick's number during that time, because I had actually reached out to you like, who is this guy? And I remember having a
Yeah,
lot of conversations with you, Nick, before we even had like control
Yep.
of the Facebook group, just
Right.
dreaming about, wishing there was more education out there and
Yeah, because
availability information.
we didn't take control until what, 22
22. Yep.
July
So, yep.
22.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
something else. So I do
that
want,
group's what, close to 7,500 now.
yeah, it is.
Yep.
It is. So Jeff, though, one of the things I want to ask, if your return on investment, I guess is the way I would like to frame this. I mean, I would have to imagine you've probably got more training hours than the average user, I would assume, under your belt, and maybe dollars invested too. I mean, any regret whatsoever?
No, I mean, only that I would have done it earlier. And, when I first got Mosaic, I took a couple training sessions with them. And then it was just one of those things. I think a lot of people are the same. They're just old, crusty woodworkers. And they don't, you know what I mean? They're like, I can do this or I can do that. And then when Nick started unfolding all these different layers and whatever, and I'm like, how much time or how many, the, double partitions behind a face frame, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So that you can, you're not locating mounting hardware, how much time that saves you, and all this stuff like that. It all started to fall into place. And when I look at it like this, you got to think like, let's book an hour or two of training, whether it be 100, 200, 300 bucks somewhere in there. I can knock 8 or 10 things off my list, and I don't have to go out there and cut. The cheapest material I have is white melamine, and it's $35 a sheet plus cutting, and it doesn't take long. I mean, I just don't want to be frustrated and, messing it up and then having to figure it out. I just figured this is that I don't have to know everything. I'm running a company. I'm still running a construction company. I can't get out of the field quite yet, So I had all these things going on. I'm like, I don't have to know everything about MDF doors. I just have to have them set up and go. Click on it and go. And or feeds and speeds and all this. And a lot of times people are saying, well, how do you set this up? And I have to like stop and think. I don't know. I set that up, it's like labels. You know how much money labels have saved us? And then for the longest time, I didn't even know how to get my company name off of the label to something and updated, whatever. And finally, I figured out that, like, and then I go out there and I laugh. It makes sense, but it was, I had to. Each computer has a user name and something like that. But
the next time you update, I'm still going to change it back to your company name.
There you go.
I'm going to do that for my open house.
Just so everyone understands that's listening, Jeff ran for a while with his label saying my company name. Literally.
I think that was the V12 update that really, was the demise of most people we talk about.
Stop
all of a sudden, turns out Mosaic just doesn't all of a sudden do something. You usually do it yourself. But I mean, we like to blame everybody but ourselves.
That is something else.
It happens.
Goodness. Well, Jeff, I want to roll back to your shop, 2015. How big was your shop when did you build it there at the property, or it was existing?
I bought this, came down here, and the only thing that was worth anything on this property was this shop. So it was about 2,500 square feet.
And what was it prior? Wasn't it a floral shop or something?
It was a flower shop. It was 3,000 square feet, and then it had a 20 by 24 garage attached to it that I sprayed out of for a long time. So it was a flower shop, and the whole property was in disarray. And
sprayed the power, I'm guessing.
Yep. So the first thing I had to do is come in. I put a 400 amp service in from a 200. And, originally I was going to lease this. I leased it for, I was going to lease it for a year or two. And after I was in it for 3 months, the guy came in and said, hey, I want to sell you this property. And I said, well, I don't really want to buy it. He goes, wrong answer. He goes, I'm selling you this property. And I'm like, okay, so we're buying this property. And, anyway, the problem with, having a property on your own residence is originally I had to go to the county and make sure that I had a special use permit that I could run a business out of here. It had already there had been a flower shop here, and they said that, in a non-retail environment, I can run a business out of here. I didn't want anybody coming in and saying you can't do that once I'd invested a bunch of money. So that was, from that aspect, it was good. My original goal was to rent the house out that was on here, and the county said, no, you can't do that, because all of a sudden that makes it a commercial property. So
Interesting.
it has to be your primary residence if you're going to run that with a special use permit and keep it from being, taxed, as a commercial property, which I think would fall into the fact that it would default and not be able to be allowed in the area for the zoning that this property is. So I had to do that. And then, so we moved down here in 2017, and then, been fixing the property up. But then, prior to my, CNC, I wanted to upgrade the shop to real power. I mean, the one thing that we already talk about when a CNC is coming is you need power, you need air dryers, dust collection, all this stuff. And so then I upgraded that to I added on 600 square feet that I knew the CNC was going to sit at, and I added on an 800 amp 3-phase panel. And all that was, once I was down here living on that and the property, it was all that way. The other thing I would say, anybody that's looking to do like a dual use property, the mortgage companies won't touch it. It's once it's not a conventional mortgage, it's going to be hard to find somebody. You're going to find somebody that keeps the mortgage in house, because what they can't do is they can't bundle that mortgage and sell it on the open market to Freddie Mae and Fannie, or was it Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac?
Freddie Mac. Yep.
Yep. So that was kind of a troublesome spot that I found out the hard way. So when people are saying that, but I mean, also you have to figure out what your property is zoned for. At one point in time, just across the road, if I lived across the road, I wouldn't be allowed to have a bigger electric motor than 3 horsepower or something. And so I didn't get all the zoning and everything right, so that I didn't want to invest all this money and then have somebody come down here and say you can't do that. So that's what that's what I talk about on the property. And then the expansion.
Oh, what I was going to ask is just clarification. So when you first bought the property, it was a 2,500 square foot shop, and then you said 600 square feet when it came time for the CNC, or did you add on to it prior to that?
Prior to the CNC. So it was 50 by 60, so 3,000. And then it had a little spot that I sprayed in 3,400. And I added another 600. So I got up to 4,000 square feet.
Got it. Okay. And then fast forwarding to, I guess, last fall, maybe even before that, leading up to it, what have you done to your shop? You did something. What did you add?
Yeah. So, I added, I've had it drawn up for a while, and there was some other stuff I had to take care of and get it figured out, but I added another 4,500 square feet. So I have 8,500 square feet now. And, a lot of that came from, last year. Nick went on his, world tour or whatever, and I followed him to four places. And I saw some shops that were bigger than mine. I saw some shops that were smaller than mine. I'm going to say this because I was at a event, and the guy said, how many of these have you been to? And I said, this is my 4th. And he goes, you must be a slow learner. True story.
True story. I was standing right there. That is a true story. Best line ever.
Be a slow learner.
But, another thing with the groups and the social media has allowed me to travel a lot and seeing all these different things. And I just really saw, all these shops and how they're moving and how the parts and pieces are moving. And, in order for me to move, I needed more space. It comes back to the fact that I started off the Shop Saver. I'd upgraded to a VSE, and I got it with the offload because I knew someday I was going to add on. I knew I had to add on. And really what it came down to is I had a whole bunch of equipment sitting in my shop with no space to build other than whatever we could get out immediately. And so it's just, you talk about trying to choreograph something, and if there's one hiccup, all of a sudden you're not making any money, and you have all this. So I really had like more machinery than I really needed for the space. And so I kind of did a heart-to-heart, and I mapping it all out, and looking at some stuff. Last year, new homes were down, and I switched over to basically all remodels, running remodels, and so all that stuff was pre-finished. Jason, you helped me out with the finish, got me going on Series 80 or whatever. And so I really kind of sat there and tried to focus on a product that I could pre-finish. Our market, a lot of it goes out unfinished. And so I had this set up, and I'm like, I need space. And, so I talked to my wife about it, and she said, I don't care what you do. But it's going to take a lot of time, and you don't have any more time to give because all your time's taken up. And so I went and did it, and it took longer. I would think that if I wanted to get it done fast, I've self-performed most of it, or not most of it. I subcontracted it myself, and I had people that I work with on a daily basis come in to do a lot of the contracting, which also meant that I didn't get to say I need you here now. It was kind of as they could get there, you know what I mean? And still during the day and stuff like that or whatever. But so financially that made more sense because I wasn't getting charged the full on rate, but it took probably 2 or 3 months longer, than 2 months longer. And then the end was, do we start producing cabinets out of there, or do we actually get it set up the way we want it to? And for the longest time, every cabinet in my shop that was like a shop cabinet was some messed up cabinet from a job, you know what I mean? And so I actually brought in a couple units of stuff, and we actually took the time and make what we really wanted. So yeah, I hope it's worth it. It took a lot longer and it cost a lot of money. I know that.
And so you've had a few weeks or couple months maybe now under your belt.
Probably three solid weeks of just working in here where a job didn't go out. I mean, I had Tim working on one thing or whatever, but then there was another 3 of us firing away, and I was, running airlines at night and dust collection and everything, painting and trying to get it going. So
what differences do you notice already now that you have the space you were after?
It's like freedom. I went to that auction and bought 16 parts carts, and we're like, this is too many carts. But now they get all dispersed out, and so we've been running out here 2 or 3 weeks now, and I probably have 4 or 5 jobs going. So no matter what, I've got trying to get my guy Tim. He's cutting jobs ahead, which means I have to stay ahead, and I have to be more detail oriented on my drawings and everything. But we got parts loaded up, so if somebody calls and says, hey, something happened, this isn't ready, I'm not down anytime. I got 2 more guys in here and we're pre-finishing it. So we finally got kind of firing on all cylinders, and it's it's encouraging. We just need to run it a lot. So I really didn't need, I bought some more equipment. I'm not gonna lie about that, but I didn't need a whole lot.
You're kidding me.
I did. I bought a vacuum lift to lift sheets. None of us are getting any younger. And then, it's a new dust collection and some stuff like that. I got an actual spray booth. I was spraying in a 400 square foot, area before. And now I have, about 1,200 square feet to spray in.
And you mentioned offload. You built an offload table too, right? And that's up and running.
I built an offload table. Yep. My budget ran out of money before I could buy the BSE offload table. So I took Burton B idea and made an offload table, and it has made a huge, I ordered the CNC with the sweep on it because it had to come that way. So I ordered that Rover K like that, and then we had never used it, and my guy Tim had never really been around it. And we put this thing on there, and we hit these 2 buttons, and it offloads the sheet. And you go grab another one with the vacuum lift and throw it on there, and he's labeling parts. And
so that was pretty plug and play. Once you built that table,
yeah,
sweep worked pretty much right out. Nice.
I did notice your post on that. You had the dust collection set up at the front and back of the table. Is that working out well for you?
It is. I had that whole system sized, and I just left it sized to have an 8-inch port open to that. And yeah, it works out great. I mean, we're not capturing 100% of the dust, but before it was, before we had the pumps over on the side, I got that rack that you sent me the drawing for. I told my metalworking
for the Beckers. For the Becker
pumps, I told them, I said, don't ever expect a drawing this good from me to come again. They're used to some sketch or whatever. I have this perfect drawing from Jason. So, the machines move 2 more feet out away from the wall on all sides. We can get around it. We can clean it. I reran the pipes for the vacuum pumps back through the machine, and they're off to the side. There's nothing really to trip over, and it's it's at the end of the day, nothing really makes up for space. I mean, you can have all the tools in the world, but at some point in time, you actually just need space, and that's what one of the things I really came to realize in the last year. I was selling shapers and all this. I mean, I didn't need them all. And, I had 8 shapers on the floor, so you don't have to reset anything up. And it's all, I mean, it's just all part of the growing process. But when I look what I need, I just needed space.
Do you want to share your hack on how to fix a panel lift?
So we're at the end of the project. I'm not going to tell you, it was about $2,000 out at the end of this project. And I have this panel lift that I bought from an auction that I've been storing in my personal garage for 6 months. My wife wasn't real thrilled about that, but the vacuum tube was leaking air. And I brought Lisa and Claire over one night. I'm like, it just doesn't quite lift. Where's this thing leaking air? And they put their hands around it. And my wife goes, Jeff, it's leaking all up and down this. So I called and I asked for, a quote on a tube, and it came in at like $19,087. And I'm like, I'll get back to you on that one. And so I'm walking around the shop trying to figure it. So I grabbed this roll of 6-inch shrink wrap, and I shrink wrapped this thing, and I turned it on and it lifted. So I re-shrink wrapped it. I ordered a bunch of this blue gauze fabric wrap, for like, medical wrap. It's flexible, and I went out there and we taped it up, and I got it fixed, I think, for under $17 for now.
Good job. That is awesome. One other question on the shop that I always like to ask, or I always think about, like I know you probably spent some time on SketchUp, I would assume, laying out your shop, where your equipment's going to go. Any regrets at this point? Now, I know you've only been using it for 3 weeks, but do you feel like your thought process as to where the equipment was going to be placed, you see that as being, do you regret anything at this point?
No,
Okay.
I don't.
Awesome.
I actually, I was going to put a sliding table saw out there. Nick told me not to, so we put it in, and so I'm glad I didn't do that. I probably had 7 or 8 different shop layouts drawn up. I originally wasn't going to go this big, and then I did the math and came down to it, and to double the amount of space I was adding at the time was going to be the cheapest I would ever get it at. So I went with that. But so far, no.
When you say do the math, you were just balancing loan payment with square footage. Is that what you mean by that?
Loan payment with square footage, and at the time, I mean, what's an extra 2,500, 2,000 square foot going to cost me now versus to come back? And it would cost over twice as much to do it, And so at some point in time, you're basically your exterior walls. All you're doing is paying for the center and the concrete. And it was.
So have you essentially maxed out the square footage of building you can put on your property now at this point, or is there even an opportunity for a future expansion if needed?
There is. My wife says I'm blocking out the sun, and I had to take down our above ground pool to get what I got. And looking anywhere forward is going to be this like all stone fire pit that she made by herself because I got removed from the project for having a poor attitude. And so I don't think that's possible. But I will say this is I don't think I could add on any more to the existing shop in the fact that they wanted I had to go up and get a fire sprinkler review for this shop. And I'm like, well, I'd never done that before. And they said, nope, you need a commercial permit. So things had changed since I'd added on in 2020. So it had been 4 years. And they ended up going through some stuff, and I didn't have to put fire sprinklers in here. But if I was going to, it was going to end up being like over $100,000 because you would need a wet system down below. And since a wood frame structure, you would need a dry system up in the rafters. And that was, there was going to be, the water main and everything else. You're going to be like well over 100,000. And so I think don't hold me to this because I have a long history of saying I'll never do something. I do it, but I think we're good for a bit.
I figured as much.
I think the shop now is going to be that much more efficient with what I have. And, if I get 2 or 3 guys in here, that's probably going to be about the right size for me. Any more than that, I think you would almost going to have to start to look at, any more than 8,500 square feet. I think you're maybe at something like, I don't know where that, 15 to 20,000 or something. And then, a whole herd of people. So, if that happens, great. But it's going to be, the one thing is going to take a lot more on the front end, as you know, Jason.
Yep.
To run everything. I'm trying to figure all that out right now, but it takes a lot to run more work.
Did you decide to heat and cool the new space?
I did. I have floor heat. I've had floor heat in my last few shops. The shop I have now, when when I moved in, it had floor heat, alpha high efficiency boiler, so you don't really have to worry about any combustion. And then the new shop has air conditioning. The old shop has air conditioning as well. He's got like 6 of these filters on it. We really think that we're going to be running that AC at night to pull the humidity and everything else out. I don't know with the vacuum pumps and everything going that it'll ever, keep up during the day. We put off a lot of heat between the air compressors and the vacuum pumps.
Yep. Let me take a small pivot here, Jeff. You mentioned selling shapers.
Yep.
And now you have a slider. And you've always made your own doors in-house. I've tried for a long time to get you to buy doors. This is an intervention. Surprise. Jason's here. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Maybe if your mind has changed, how you felt about that, over the years. I know it was kind of a pride point to make your doors in-house. I know there were builders that wanted you to be doing that. But where do you sit with it now, and what do you think the future holds for that?
So I owe you a set of buyout doors for a unrelated.
That's true.
It is true. I owe you a set of buyout doors to do that, to try it. But long and short, I was never organized or on top of the ball enough to, to get it going. And I had these boxes sitting here. It just gave me time for my guy to do something without anything else coming into the shop. He could build doors. Now that I have more guys, if we'll build doors, we build doors. But if I get on top of them and I can order them out, that would be the thing to do. I had one builder that said, "Do you build doors?" There was a big door shop here that went under, and nobody could get doors for however long it took. And he had a couple houses sitting, so he came in and said, "You build them here?" And I said, "Yep." And he handed me a few house plans. I've done his work since, whatever. That being said, I don't make money at doors. I just do it to control my schedule. And if I'm really a businessman, which I have to be now, that it's probably would make more sense to get on top of it and have those jobs. I mean, part of that's you need to have your jobs entered up. I can't be drawing a job the morning the guys are going to be cutting on it. And so, do I need to get out in front of it and order doors? Absolutely. Will I? I don't know.
How long did it take him to start using Zillow feet?
It's the 18-month cycle.
And those X Series brackets, everything going today.
Yeah, if you weren't on top of it, bud, that's for darn sure. But with all those extra guys, you're going to have to really start cranking, get those drawings done in advance, get them stacked up and ready to go.
I know this is
that's probably
a conversation with Jeff, Jason, but do you want to add maybe a minute or two of why you chose the buyout route many years ago, and why you elected to do that?
As far as
for you.
Yeah. We can definitely get into that. So Jeff, I'm sure you've heard the arguments from everyone, that does buyout, and there's an argument, right? I've met with shops that love being somewhat vertically integrated, where they can produce a drawer, they can produce a door, and like you explained, I mean, just your ability of having those tools, available to build a door actually gained yourself a customer, which, I would have missed out on that. Right. But for us, it's crazy now when I think of my shop and my setup where, I mean, we essentially process panels, assemble cabinets and finish them. That's really what it's come down to. But for us, it's just been a cost control thing too, and a quality thing. I always tell the story, and I'm sure you've been to different door shops in the Omaha area. But my drawer box guy, I mean, he's probably got $750,000, maybe $1 million in that shop, and all he does is build drawer boxes. And then you look at some of these door shops, Decorative Specialties, Wallscraft, Conestoga. I mean, these massive shops, and we enjoy the ability just to order them out. 2 weeks, they show up. If something's damaged, they remake them. They're warranted. All those kind of things. We've had a lot of success from it, just from a cost control standpoint, I guess. But so hopefully you'll turn your head that way slowly. I do want to
At least
add
try.
something else I want to ask too. I know you've always had the shop and also doing contracting, a little bit of contracting or trim work on the side. Are you still offering that service, or is your plan to trend more towards 100% shop fabrication or manufacturer instead of also doing trim, I guess?
This really is an intervention, isn't
Sorry.
Tell Jason what you did this week.
it? I've trimmed a house. It's hard, but it's getting less and less hard. And I've talked to you about this. I've talked to Nick, and I talked to other people. Is that I got to get out of the field if I'm going to keep this going. And with the new shop expansion, I just can't. I can't be out there. And I don't have the trained manpower. As a trim carpenter, I have one contractor that I'm kind of wrapping that up for, and I'm thinking another one that I'm going to say no more. And as far as the contracting goes, unless the economy tells me I have to go bid a bunch of remodels, I'm just going to try to build cabinets. I mean, I was walking around here the other day, and to have 3 guys firing on all cylinders around here, and it just takes me to do everything. And then, if I'm out trimming a house, this all stops. It wasn't that bad when there was one guy here. I could get enough stuff. One guy trimming the machines could keep everything going. They paid the bills. You know what I mean? And we did okay. But when you start adding on the square footage and the cost and overhead of the new shop, my days of being a carpenter probably should be done. And I don't enjoy. I like being a carpenter. I don't like being out in the field trying to build a handrail and having people call me about submittals and everything else. It's not the quality. It affects the quality on both sides. It affects the quality of the work that I'm doing out there, and in the office as well. And I'm not really being that productive no matter where I'm at.
Now that you have this extra space, have you considered adding any dealer line for lower cost projects to offer to your
I have.
customers? Okay.
I have.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So, once again, I was trying to find a way to get a couple of these jobs, and Jason told me about a couple different options. So I have 2 lines of pre-built cabinets that I sell and distribute, and it's pretty simple. You order them in, they show up, and you send them out to the job. And people will say, "Why would you do that?" And I said, "Well, I can make X amount of dollars on this. I don't have to build every single cabinet. I'm a businessman. So some people, my cabinets don't fit in their price range. And there's been times when, to take a page from your playbook, and the fact that I had people that wanted all custom kitchen and all this, but their budget was getting stretched at the end of this house. And I said, well, we can do pre-builts to save you some money here and there. And they mixed and matched that. And at the end of it, they were happy. And I was happy. I made money. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm not going to cut my quality down to a level. I can't cut my quality and my product down to a level to build some, level that they would be happy with, and that I could make any money on. And so by bringing in a good pre-built, not overselling them, not overpromising them, and set them in, get them put in there and make money.
Do you see those cabinets as being a threat to your custom products?
I don't. I kind of just see them as 2 separate entities.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Good job.
There's people in town here that are doing, they're buying houses for rentals. Houses they're going to put rentals. They're not going to come. They don't want a custom set of cabinets. They're going to want, a set of cabinets they can get quick. You're going to want to know how fast can you get them and how much are they, and are, they're already finished. We don't have to worry about finishing or anything like that. So.
Yep.
It's awesome.
If you had projects come along where you started to do a lot more of those, would you have any hesitation doing that?
None whatsoever. Nope. Good. And I would find a crew. I've got a couple different install crews, and I would literally just, I bought a box truck, so I could deliver stuff, and I would just have them, ship here to the shop, and then I would deliver them to the job site, and somebody else would install them. And, basically I'm making money right there with Mosaic. All I have to do is draw it up and order it. And so I can sit in the office and do that. And when I think about that, I can be more efficient doing that than I can be a carpenter.
It's awesome that you're seeing that.
So it sounds, Jeff, like from the drawing side, Daily and Mosaic company depends entirely on you right now, right, for G-code drawings and everything. Do you see that changing someday? I know your daughter started messing around with Mosaic.
Yeah,
Do
my
you see that
daughter
being a part of the future? Tell me about that a little bit.
at some point in time, yes. But what actually has to happen there is this winter. I think I talked to Jason about it, and I actually had a training with Grant, and we talked about it. I just took some time and made a library just for the pre-built buy-up cabinets. That way, somebody can come in here and drag those in. The rest of my libraries, I got to get cleaned up. I got to get a SOP written and all this so that somebody can come in. It wouldn't be fair right now for somebody to come in because we can only draw the way my mind thinks, and people don't think like that. So that's my goal this year, is to try to really get Mosaic cleaned up, and the fact that I could bring somebody in here and they could start to draw, have a library that actually probably is labeled correctly, and it's not, not something I made on a spur of a moment and labeled it wrong, but I know it's labeled wrong, but it's still, that's what we use.
Well, maybe as
But
that
I think
transition. Go ahead.
starting on pre-builds, Jeff, I think is a really good way to get somebody started with Mosaic. I mean, expecting
Yes,
them to do a
absolutely.
full G-coded custom job out of the gate is a lot to ask. So it's good.
Awesome. Well,
The lead candidate to take over that, position would be the guy who's my shop foreman, so he doesn't get to come in here, Um, but he probably has the most experience as far as the parts and pieces. Tim's been with me for 9 years now, since we were cutting, since you had to make your own cut list off of, deductions and all this. And so he can just literally tell when parts aren't right coming off the CNC. And so, I kind of wondered about bringing him in here or whatever, but I think he's best out in the shop to run the shop. And I don't, like I said, I know it's coming. If I'm going to get to the mark I want, I want to get up pretty high. From 2020 to 2021, I doubled my production. And since then, it's been on a steady upwards, but I would like to, I want to really break the million mark. It's going to take some work to do that. And then anything above that's probably going to take at least another full-time office person drawing or selling jobs.
Well,
Good goal, though.
The one thing I've found too is once you do hit that $1 million mark and you have that extra person in the office, you'll find that even though that does cost a lot of money, that can actually carry you much further beyond than what you realize too. I mean, even beyond the 2 million mark with that staff that you would need to handle over $1 million. A lot of times that staff that you have can carry you much further than what you'd think. Especially with good systems in place and that kind of thing.
I think we should talk a little bit about the open house coming up. I know you've posted it on social media. When is it? What should people expect? And
May 16th, and it's going to be
that's a Friday, right?
Friday, May 16th. Yep. It's going to be like 9 to 4 at my shop, and it's basically, throughout the years I started with a 5-piece door class, and then Nick and I did a whole bunch of different classes on Mosaic and intro to Mosaic, and converting a shop over to software. And Denny came down, Denny Johns, and so it's just kind of, instead of having a class, I was just going to do an open house, because when I look at this expansion, this wouldn't be possible without the partnership I have. I think Nick's coming, Nick Frost CNC, Phil Anton. Denny is now with Surf Prep, so he's coming. Billy with Centurion Coatings, and Nick's going to provide lunch. Scott Brandenburg is going to be here with Biesi, and I think Grant with Mosaic's coming too.
That is awesome. I'm hearing good things.
And you're coming, Jason, right?
Yes.
Jason's going to be there.
I'm bringing carloads.
So it's just going to be
carload.
I'm bringing
Nice.
carloads. Yep. 2 cars.
I'm going to have my Waukee West cabinet shirt on. So
love it.
Yeah, just a open house just to see, all the parts and pieces that allowed me to, grow. Like I said, without the community and the relationships that I've built, I wouldn't be, where I'm at. I'd still probably be cutting on a panel saw and never opening the interior tab of Mosaic.
Yeah, I'm glad this is an open house style, Jeff. I think those types of conversations and just a lot more casual and smaller groups of people talking to each other is honestly probably the best part of any class we've done, right? Is the stuff after the class. It's the
Yeah.
lunchtime,
Yep.
it's chatting with people afterwards and becoming friends with those people, seeing those people become friends with each other. Um, so it's gonna be an awesome event.
And that I'll mention too, that does speak to the power of the groups, and that's something I've enjoyed because I mean, you guys are examples, but got so many friends now from these groups. Really got a chance to meet a lot of people that we wouldn't have otherwise known, outside of the group. So, but Jeff, we really appreciate you coming on with us.
Well, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, this was awesome.